everybody. Happy Friday out there. Welcome to another edition of Wrestling Remembered. I'm your host and producer, Joe Whataday Lowry, and this week we are talking wrestling's most memorable voices. And, you know, they can range anywhere from ring announcers to TV hosts, even wrestlers themselves. But one thing they do have in common is when you heard their voices, you knew exactly who they were and where you were probably as well. But first, with always, are my esteemed colleagues. We are -1 today. We'll get to that in a second. First up, though, he is my brother from another mother, the poet laureate of Monty and the Pharaoh channel, who is fresh off a heartbreaking loss of his beloved 30 title last night. Let's welcome back the player, Mr. Benny Scala. Welcome, Benny.
Thank you. Remember, look out for number 1, but don't step in number 2.
Ooh, always quick with that. Always quick with that. And next up, he hails from the great state of Massachusetts. You can call him anything, but do not call him late for dinner. He's the man, the myth, the legend. Let's welcome the president of Thursday nights, Mr. Phil DeCesare.
Wrestling fans around the corner, around the world, welcome to Wrestling Remembered. And yes, as evidenced by my eating on air the other night, don't call me late for dinner.
Man, we got two great wrestling voices right on this show.
I feel like I just got off the air. That was like the longest show last night.
I'll tell you.
That was a marathon.
Over 3 hours. That
was like a 22-inning baseball game.
We are Iron Men.
Yeah. Yes. And so was the people in the chat joining us tonight. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Looks like we got a lot of Jason, Ja, Will, Beth, Maria. Everybody's in the house tonight. Thank you so much for joining us. Tell all your friends, hit that subscribe button, hit the like button, share the video, do whatever you got to do.
Happy Friday.
Get the word out that Wrestling Remembered is on the air. All right, let's talk wrestling's most memorable voices. I came up with this topic really off the top of my head because
great topic, though.
When I think about it, back, becoming a fan, the voices I heard were just so you could just tell who they were. Whether it was Vince McMahon, whether it was Pat Patterson, Bruno Sammartino, and of course, let's see if you guys remember this guy.
This doctor in attendance at ringside, Dr. George Soharian, the timekeeper at the bell, Mike Mitchell, and the referees for this hour of wrestling, Dick Worley, Danny Davis, Dick Crow, Billy Caputo, and the mighty Jericho.
Yep, there you go. What do you guys think of that one? Huh?
I'll tell you what. The minute I heard, ladies and gentlemen, everything for the next hour in my world was perfect.
Yeah,
there could be a nuclear holocaust.
Absolutely.
Outside my home, I didn't give a crap. I was locked in for the next hour. His voice just, we're creatures of habit, and
sure.
His voice was very reassuring. I just knew that for the next hour, I was going to watch wrestling, and all was well in my world.
It was Saturday morning. It was 11 a.m. on Channel 56, and it was Joe McHugh. The way he would roll those syllables off the tongue, amazing.
I was just always shocked that, every week it became hypnotic. You knew what he was saying. You understood it. You memorized it. I would go to school saying that.
I would memorize the roll call too. Yes.
Didn't know how to spell it, but I knew how to pronounce it. Dr. George Saharian, timekeeper at the bell, Charlie Daniels, whoever it was at the time. But
Executive Francis Walker. Yeah. My Lord.
But it lent a some athleticity, like this state athletic commission.
The athletic
talking about here. So, it's legit, right?
Athletic commission. Exactly. And it looks like someone's backstage. I'm going to see when they're ready. We got a surprise guest coming on here.
Running
everybody. Yep. And let's bring him on right now. We have I feel like we just left this guy, everybody. Let's welcome to the stage here. There he is.
Who that?
Jimmy Farrow in the house.
Farrow, Esquire.
What up? What
Esquire?
It's funny. I wasn't sure I'd be able to get in and stuff. I tried calling Betty, I didn't even realize that this was happening right this second. I basically just got home from work. I was multitasking at work. I'm doing a live auction selling sports cards and coins, and I'm listening to the Chuck Palumbo thing simultaneously. They asked me, "What are you doing?" I said, "I'm multitasking." What?
Yep.
So I walk in the door, and I just got a phone call from Wahoo's son Zach. And I'm trying to see if Zach is coming by too. So you might have Zach McDaniel coming on too. So we're gonna try to see if we can pull all of this craziness off here. But I had just sent you a text, Phil. I was like, "Have Joe get me in." I was like, "Okay."
You pop
Hi, everybody. How are you?
All right, we're good. Happy Friday.
Happy
Friday. Oh, great.
What a day.
What a day. What a night last night, huh? Over 3 hours of just reckless banter. And I got to tell you, that was the longest time I've sat in this chair. 3 straight hours.
Guys, just for a second, Karen, say hi. Karen, what are you doing down there?
Karen, what's Karen doing down there?
Yeah, really?
Karen, a little higher, Karen. A little higher.
Karen's setting up the lights over here. Notice my lights
don't
work,
sure.
Joe.
Good evening.
There she is. Hey, Karen, how are you?
Yeah, typical me, just being a ham and hamming it up. I'm like, Karen, what are you doing over there? Karen, thank you very much. Let me tell you something. If it wasn't for Karen, you guys wouldn't see me at all. Karen sets me up and does all the production work. She's wait a minute, she's my Abe. Boy,
there you go.
If this is my Abe, boy, do I got it made. Anyway,
she's your Karen.
She's your babe, not your Abe.
Joe, what do you? Joe, what do you call your other half? What do you call her? You got a nickname for your other half,
baby
Joe?
Cakes. She's my baby cakes.
Baby, look at this. Karen knows this. Karen's like baby cakes. I'm like, okay, thank you, baby cakes.
She's in the chat somewhere. She's up. Joe Myers, aka Baby Cakes. That's right.
There we go. Excellent. Yep. Thanks, hon.
All right. We're Jimmy. We're talking wrestling's most memorable voices tonight. I'm sure you know of a few. I just played the popular one, Joe McHugh, ring announcer for WWF for many years. Doctor in attendance, Dr. George Sohadian, timekeeper at the bell. You remember him, right?
And I'm your ring announcer, Joe McHugh.
There you go.
Did you ever notice, though, poor Joe and poor Gary a lot? Well, Joe later on got cheers, but, man, Gary used to get booed. I'm your ring announcer, Gary Michael Campana, and everybody be like, boo. I'm like, why the hell are you booing him? He's great.
And then George Steele used to chase him.
George Steele, Jimmy
and Snuka too,
yeah. He used to eat his boutonniere every week. He used to run around and run away from him. You know, it's funny. I was looking up old announcers all stuff. Do you guys realize Steve Allen was considered the first television host?
Yes, the Tonight Show, Steve Allen.
Yep, 1949. He answered an ad in a newspaper asking for wrestling announcers, and he came on and they gave him the gig, and he kicked it off in 1949 when studio wrestling was a big deal. But that was pretty good to see that. Steve Allen, 1949.
I recall he hosted an NBC it was like one of those Saturday afternoon specials just on the history of wrestling. So he was the host, the moderator, and he really had a lot of knowledge. It was very cool. Again, this is the guy who was at one time the host of the Tonight Show. I mean, no small job, you know.
Did he get that job? Didn't he accidentally fall into that job? Didn't somebody get sick or something like that, and he filled in? Or
Jack, did it go from Jack Parr to Steve Allen, perhaps?
I think he
was and then Johnny.
Yeah, he just happened to be in the right spot at the right time, and they gave him the gig. So I totally forgot Jimmy Lennon Sr.
Yes.
Auditorium.
There you go. There's Blassie.
Yep.
The Olympic.
That was a guy that I
RI95171, I think was the phone number.
Wasn't that the days with Johnny Red Shoes Dugan as the referee over in that Olympic auditorium?
Yeah, man.
Java Rook and John Tolos. Can't forget John Tolos, right, Jimmy?
Yeah, John Tolos should be in the Hall of Fame. He should be.
John Tolos should have his own Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. I have such fond memories of the Olympic Auditorium, because in our area, Benny, you probably remember because you were out here back in the day. Well, out here, wait a minute, in New York. Back in the day, I used to watch it on UHF, Paterson, New Jersey, Channel 41,
WXTV.
47
Correct.
and 41 both had Lucha Libre de Profesional. And I used to go to my grandpa's house, and he lived in Sheepshead Bay, and it was on Saturdays from what I remember. Sure. And we used to watch it on the UHF, and it was such a great memory, and I loved the Olympic wrestling.
The only problem is I got addicted to Goya Foods.
Yeah. What happened?
Was that one of the sponsors?
The only problem is I got addicted to Goya Foods. All the commercials with Goya Foods.
Yeah, well, I refused to eat anything as a kid. My mother took me to the doctor, and the doctor said no kid ever voluntarily starved himself to death. Don't worry, I'll eat. So I wasn't going for Goya. I wasn't even going for Nathan's. I was impossible in the early days.
Nathan's.
I got
hot
a great
dogs,
name
baby.
that nobody would really associate with professional wrestling.
What's that?
And that is Joe Garagiola.
Oh,
Yes.
Joe
The baseball who actually
St.
announced
Louis,
for
right?
Sam Muchnick in St. Louis.
Yeah.
He actually
you know-
was part of that NBC piece back in like the 84, 85 when they did a story on wrestling.
He was part of that Steve Allen thing, I think.
Joe
actually,
Garagiola.
too.
Yeah.
He also bore a remarkable resemblance to Vern Gagne, I think.
Oh,
did,
yeah.
yes.
They did a side by side before, and they
Right.
both look
Doppelganger?
remarkably similar.
That's
He's
like
a
Eric
doppelganger.
Sims and Bob Geigel.
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
personally, I think that an egg bears an amazing resemblance to Vern Gagne.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You know,
I think you're right, Jimmy.
just put a little hair on the sides of the egg, and there you go.
Draw a smile on it, and there it is.
Yeah.
Now,
And speaking of St. Louis wrestling, if I may, for a moment, we were talking about announcers and actually people who bear resemblances to one another. Larry Matezik, I believe, is the name of the man. He looked like Vince. He bore a resemblance to Vince McMahon back in the day. They really looked similar, but both were actually announcers at the same time. Yes.
Wow.
The first voice I ever heard in wrestling.
Vince McMahon, I told you. Hey, Jimmy, I ever tell you my story about how I became a wrestling fan? Did I ever tell you the story?
Well, I know who you went to school with, but you might as well tell me this
No,
story. Go
that
ahead.
was high school. It was the summer of '81. A neighbor of mine said he had a paper route. And he said, "Can you do my paper route for a couple of weeks while they go down the Cape or whatever?" And I said, "Sure, I'll do it." So I'm doing the paper route. You know, on Fridays you have to collect money for the paper. You know, you go around on the paper route and you get money.
Sure.
But this one lady said, "Come back on Saturday." So I came back. It was an older lady. I came back on a Saturday morning. It was like around 10 or 11 o'clock in the morning. And I knock on the door, and she opens the door, and it was summertime. The screen door was open, and I hear this ruckus coming out of her living room. And I'm like, what is
I was
going
just outside, and I thought I heard a ruckus.
Yeah, a ruckus.
Describe the ruckus?
Can you describe the ruckus? Yes.
Yeah.
So I asked her, I go, "What are you watching on TV?" And she goes, "That's Saturday morning wrestling." And I ran back home. I asked her what channel it was. I ran back home, and I was hooked right then and there. And all I remember is the Moondogs, Tony Gurria, everybody running around the ring, Lou Albano, Vince McMahon screaming, Patterson screaming, and I was hooked. My Saturdays changed forever. And
Absolutely.
and that's when I got my friend. It took me forever to figure out that Joe McHugh was Joe McHugh. That's how you spelled it. I thought it was like McCool because he kept going McHugh, and I'm like, what's his name again?
Right.
I thought it was Jim first, Jim McCool. But
One of my greatest memories of pro wrestling was when my parents finally let me have a TV in my room.
Oh yeah.
Because I was always being told you're too young, you can't stay up late for Saturday Night Live, you can't stay up late for this, you can't stay up late for that. And finally I got a little black and white in my room, and I beelined for 12 o'clock midnight on Saturday nights because I had only heard about championship wrestling. I could only catch All-Star Wrestling, which in New York was put on UHF stations. We had a Long Island station. Benny probably remembers it, Benny, Channel 67 in Smithtown.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Oh, wow.
This is where I got to see Gary Michael Capetta, but I always wondered about the other show. I was like, the other show seems like it's even bigger than All-Star Wrestling, and it was.
Oh yeah, it was. It was the main program. Wrestling is the number one reason why I got a TV in my bedroom, because when cable rolled down my street in 1982, and I told my father, "Now I can watch Georgia wrestling, world class wrestling." He's like, "Oh no, you don't. You're not hijacking the TV on me now." And I got a TV in my room, and that was it for me.
That's so funny. We all have the same story. Christmas 1967, I got a 12-inch. I think it was 12-inch, whatever the smallest one was, a Hitachi, black and white, which I brought up to my room because then, I didn't have the TV for sports. And that's actually where I discovered wrestling on Channel 47 on Saturday nights.
Right.
Yeah, I got a 12-inch right now. Oh, wait, we're talking about TVs?
Whoa. Where's Karen? I don't see Karen in the picture. Where is she?
She went out to skip rope.
But I mean, when I got cable, I was WOR showed Championship Wrestling at midnight. I used to get that out of New York, even though I'm in Boston.
Yeah.
PIX, I think it was there another channel? PIX out of New York, or somebody had it.
Yeah, I heard of that. Yeah.
Same Championship Wrestling 3 times in a row on the same Saturday. So if I really missed something without taping it, I can go back and watch it. So
speaking of late nights, if we were to fast forward 15 years from that time, Joe,
sure.
I was awakened one Saturday night by a group of friends who decided to wake me up because I hadn't gone out. So got up, cracked open some beers, turned on the TV. ECW.
Oh, geez.
ECW.
It's a crazy time slot. 2 o'clock.
I knew of it. I received I got the bootleg tapes from my friend in Connecticut who worked for Titan.
It was all underground back then. It was underground shit.
It was, but I was hooked. And needless to say, Saturday nights, appointment TV, 1 o'clock on the Spanish channel in Worcester.
Of course. Yeah,
ECW. Brought to you by the great Joey Styles.
Joey Styles.
Joey Styles.
Is in a world unto himself.
He put Francine through the table.
That's all I'm screaming. Oh my God.
The fact that Joey Styles did it all by himself most of the time.
He did. We saw him. Yeah, we saw him in Webster, Massachusetts. He actually came. It was their first, I think, one of their first cards in Massachusetts.
Yeah.
And they recorded a few weeks worth of shows there. And Joey was the announcer. And we actually got to meet him. And just a fantastic guy, you know.
Yeah. My first ECW was in Fall River, and Sabu landed on my lap, and I'm like, I love this shit.
Yeah.
This is great. Tommy Rich bleeding all over the place. You went home with Tommy Rich's blood all over you, and little.
You're a blood hunter. Never mind that guy up in Canada, man.
I love blood. You know.
I know. Don't we all?
How can you not love blood? You know. What I mean?
Happiness is getting stoned with Tommy Rich. Let me tell you.
I am. Wow. I'm very envious.
Tommy is a dude. I love Tommy Rich. Every time I see him, it's like we never missed a beat. Tommy Rich is a great guy, man.
I love to meet Tommy. Yeah.
Very cool. You wouldn't be disappointed.
Yeah.
Now, Phil, you had mentioned the guy, Lord James Blair's. He had a kind of an iconic voice.
Tally ho. Lord James Blair's was an amazing. Not only was he a great announcer, commentator, but just an amazing man, you know. And I've known of his history for a long time. During WW2, he was aboard. The Japanese actually torpedoed the merchant ship that he was on. I think it was a Dutch ship, and they took everyone prisoner and executed most of them, beheaded most of them. But Lord Blears was a swimmer since he could crawl. Yeah. Ultimately, actually became an Olympic swimmer too. Was able to escape the camp and swim to safety, and he was picked up by I think the British. And he hadn't eaten in weeks, and they gave him a can of peaches. So every year, at the time of his rescue, on the anniversary, he would eat a can of peaches. But he was just an amazing guy. Obviously, we know him from Hawaii. We know him from the AWA in terms of our timeline.
Referee, right?
Yeah, he was a special referee. He did referee Hogan and Bockwinkel, that big match. Yeah.
That was that mayhem match, right? When Chaos after the match, when Hogan won it, didn't win it.
Yep.
Lord top rope, Lord James Blair's reversed it. Oh yeah.
Yes, he did.
Boy, was I angry about that, and I didn't even get to see it. You know, I was reading about it in the mags at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't have access. You know, Benny, I don't know how much you remember about Lord James Blair's. I had no access to him, so I can't really offer up much. You know what I mean?
We saw him on AWA, Jimmy, back in the day on ESPN. Okay. He and Rod Schongard were from the mid '80s. We heard him, and just an amazing guy. I know he worked in Hawaii for many years, and he was the guy who sent a lot of the American. He's the guy who sent the Bulldogs to Japan first, so he was very instrumental in bringing a lot of the Americans, the guy, what they call them, the gaijin, over to work Japan. And just in the surfing community, he's very well known. His daughter was a surfer. He was a great surfer. In fact, they called him the voice of surfing in Hawaii because he just had a manner of speaking, of just enlivening the action for everybody. So wrestling, surfing, very transcendent. Great guy. Not often thought of when it comes to wrestling announcers.
All right, hold on. Time out.
What do you got?
Time out, Joe. Joe.
Yes.
I know you're driving the bus tonight, but you got to do me a favor because my lovely other half just informed me that in the corner it says that my name is Karen.
Yeah. You have
you can't.
Wow, I just noticed that. Yeah.
You have to change it. You can change it up right now. You should be able to change it.
Karen!
Hold on.
Karen!
Joe, do you remember those commercials for the Boston Science Museum?
Jimmy, what do you want it to say? What do you want it to say?
Well, I don't want it to say
Not
asshole. We could start with that. But
you want to call you Jimmy, or what do you want to call? What do you want to be?
What are you talking about? We could call me the Pharaoh. I think that's what I was.
Pharaoh? All right, we'll do that. Pharaoh? All right.
Yeah. Yeah. Joe, can you fix that? Or does Karen have to fix
I'm fixing it right now.
Oh, okay. All right. Otherwise I could act like
I'm multitasking.
Okay. Very good. Now, Joe, I know you're driving the bus tonight, so I want to make sure I don't jump way ahead with announcers and stuff like that.
No, I got tons of graphics, so hopefully I'll have something.
You threw up Vince McMahon before, and I know I'm on record anyway for saying this, but I think that Vince McMahon was a wonderful announcer.
He was.
All right?
He was solid. He was solid.
He worked well with everybody.
Great straight man.
Antonino Rocca, Bruno Patterson. He worked great with all of them.
Any non-wrestling fan will turn on wrestling and they'll hear Vince's voice. They'll know Vince just from that.
And
they don't need to see his face. They don't need to see his face. They don't need nothing. I fixed it, Karen. Karen, we're all set, Karen. We got it.
Thank you.
We got it.
Oh, thank you. She says I look very cute as a Karen. There we go. Okay.
There you go. So Mike Monty chimed in and said that his story about watching wrestling was he was watching scrambled porn, and then his mom walked in the room and he had to change it, and stupid wrestling was on. God, okay.
I remember those days too.
And Mike
thought the Valiants were girls.
Oh, did you really? Oh, wow.
Yeah. Mike, the first time I think he told me he tuned into wrestling was before he met me, and it was just a brief glimpse at it, and he thought the Valiants were chicks. I can't say I blame him. I mean,
one of my favorite announcers, I always talk about him. He's the dean of professional wrestling, Gordon Soley. This guy educated me when I got cable, and I was able to watch Georgia Championship Wrestling and then World Championship Wrestling. I mean, that guy just told me I learned how to say suplex.
Gut wrench salto. I never heard of a gut wrench salto before then.
And then Gorilla Monsoon with the gluteus maximus comments and all that other stuff. And you got
occipital protuberance.
You literally got an anatomy lesson of the human body every time you watch these guys. And who says wrestling is stupid? You were very well educated after you watched a few matches. You knew exactly what was going. Solar plexus, what's that? I'll show you. I'll show you what it is. So you gotta love it.
But he would do an interview like at his desk with like a Harley Race or a Jack Briscoe. They were breaking down a match, and I'm telling you, you would think they were breaking down the World Series. Oh yeah, that's how authentic he made it sound.
Loved it.
Very clinical.
And tell me what you were thinking here. What did you want to do when this happened? And like, oh my God, this guy's really going through the whole script here. This is pretty good. You got to love it. I love that. I love that stuff. What about Howard Finkel? Howard Finkel, Madison Square Garden. What do you guys think of him?
The voice of MSG.
What a booming voice. It's amazing when like, let's say you didn't know what Howard Finkel looked like and you heard that voice. Yeah. That's the voice of like wrestling god. It's just like, oh my God. And then all of a sudden you see Howard and it's almost like Ronnie James Dio, if anybody's familiar with Ronnie James. When you see Ronnie James Dio, he was this tiny little man, but
little squirt of a guy.
His voice was like kaboom, amazing.
Baby Cakes loves Ronnie James Dio.
Ronnie was the best, and I heard he was a really good man. More importantly, everything I've ever heard about Ronnie James Dio was he was a sweetheart. And I don't use that normally for guys, but it sure sounds like Ronnie James Dio was pretty much as pure as you're going to get. And I wanted to say quickly too that Gordon Soley is the greatest. All right. I want to get that in. If I have to start ranking these, maybe we'll do that later in the program. But Gordon Soley is the greatest announcer ever, as far as I'm concerned. He's the measuring stick for every announcer.
The dean of announcers.
He treated it like a sport. He was as real as it could get. He made you feel like you were watching something 1,000% genuine, and that's the greatest credit.
When he did those press conferences for the big matches down in Tampa, and they were at the hotel, and that looks so official to me. Like this guy, this is the real deal.
Got to be real.
Dusty Rhodes, Terry Funk, all those guys, Eddie Graham, all that stuff. It was like a real and I think that's probably where Vince kind of got it from too, because it was shortly thereafter you got Jack Tunney in a boardroom with Andre and Hogan and all that, and they're trying to do the same thing. And
right,
they were ahead of their time with that stuff.
Right,
no
right.
doubt.
I don't know if you have these guys, and I got to be honest, I don't even know their names. But whoever did the announcing in New Japan, I couldn't understand the language. Let's be honest here, but. Even though I couldn't understand a word, the conviction was coming through anyway from the announcers over at New Japan. I was just
and
I don't expect you to be able to throw up names and go, oh, well, yeah, that's this guy and this guy. But my God, I mean, they felt real. And I couldn't even understand a word they were saying. Am I making any sense here? But it was,
and Jimmy, and even beyond that, the announcers would get excited. And if you watch some of the old tapes of All Japan, even and going back to the early '80s, we know how quiet and stoic the crowd was. How they would maybe offer a polite applause or what have you, and then it evolved into like an ooh kind of thing once in a while.
Right.
But you're right; the announcers really were driving that the action in terms of the reaction.
And to further that, same thing with Lucha Libre. I didn't know. I couldn't understand a word. It was in Spanish, right, Benny?
Oh, yeah.
But they were great.
I don't want to interrupt the process. We do have a little bit of breaking news here. I've just found out. I don't know how old this is, but I'm on the sites all day long. Darby Allin has a broken foot.
He's not going to Mount Everest then.
Broke his foot. He is not going to Mount Everest now. He broke 3 bones in his foot during his match with Jay White the other night.
Yeah,
he was slated to climb Mount Everest. He's now delayed that until 2025, but now he's got a broken foot. So
that's the Lord intervening, I think. There, maybe
this goes right to. Go ahead, Jimmy.
To be very, very serious, I mean, and I look, Darby Allin is giving his body and his life up basically for what he loves, and I give him a lot of respect for that. But you know what, though, Darby Allin's going to have a miserable old age if he gets there. He's going to be
his old age. He won't
make it. He won't make it. He won't make it if he keeps this pace. He can't.
He's going to be in so much pain, and for what? I mean, honestly, for what? At that point, there's one thing to love the business, there's another thing to die for it, and I'm concerned about him. I mean, look, this is the day and age where smaller wrestlers are getting a lot of love, and that's great, but he's going to wind up really, really miserable. Yeah. I mean, I recently heard Mick Foley wants to have one final death match. Are you out of your mind? What are you doing?
He wants to drop 100 pounds and have a death match. That's his motivation, to drop 100 pounds. Just drop 100 pounds and live a little longer. But
you know what the worst part is? And I'm sure you guys will probably agree. There's a whole bunch of people that can't wait for that. What's wrong with you?
Yeah.
It's all up here, man. They think they're going to get the Mick Foley from 1995. They're not. They're going to get the Mick Foley now, who's going to be 60 years old in another year? This is what his goal is, right? To get back in the ring before he's 60 or for his 60th birthday. I don't know. The only person I know that's really going to die in the ring wrestling is going to be Ric Flair. He wants to die in the ring. There's no doubt about it. That's the place. That's where he gave his life, and that's where he's going to die. So,
obviously, his ego is his own personal cocaine. He's addicted to himself.
Yeah.
And that's very, very sad, because he should have gone out when Shawn kicked him in the face and told him how much he loved him.
Yeah. And he had that great retirement. That ceremony the next night was one of the greatest things I've ever seen.
Yep.
They should have let it end right there.
What was that? What was that Top Gun? Your ego is writing checks that your body can't cash. Something like that. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's so true. It's so true. But anyways, Darby Allin, obviously he's going to be out for a while, so I don't know how this affects anything. But
imagine if Darby were around in ECW days. That would have been something. Darby and Spike Dudley, man.
He'd be dead or in a wheelchair. There's no doubt about it.
You know what, though? Paul wouldn't have pushed him. Not a lot.
No. But he would have done it anyways. He would have done it for the fans. He would have done it for the fans.
Exactly.
You know how that goes.
And for what at the end of the day? He's going to have a miserable time when he gets older. It's not a good thing.
No.
So I have to bring up another great announcer. If Gordon Soley is number one, Lance Russell to me has to be number two.
Lance Russell, yeah.
Okay. I can see that.
I don't think Memphis wrestling happens if it's not for Lance Russell.
Yeah. See, I think that's
all those storylines were orchestrated from that that little desk he had with Dave Brown, who also was very underrated, I think.
Well, you gotta. I think back then the announcers were the selling point of the show, for vocally, hearing wise, because you're watching two guys compete It's the announcers who have to sell it to everybody at home, not just on the screen. So you get a guy like Lance Russell and the Gordon Solys and the Vince McMahons, and it could be the worst match in the world, but their voices are carrying the match. There's no doubt about it. So
and there has to be a sane, straight-laced foil to really accentuate the craziness that you're seeing from the performers.
100% agree with that.
It really ups their their craziness quotient by more, how more stoic and straight-laced and normal they are.
What do you guys think of this guy? Remember him? Lord Alfred Hayes.
Okay,
yes.
this guy. Now hold on. This guy's the biggest botch master in the history of announcing. All right. I mean, I watched this guy take a mental fart time and time over again. But here's the weird thing. Why do I still like him? Could you explain that?
Because he's from overseas.
Great wrestler back in the day too.
Thank you.
Yes,
thank you. Benny, tell people about what a nasty villain this guy could be in the ring.
Oh my God! I mean, he was Steve Regal before Steve Regal was Steve Regal.
Yeah.
William
Judo Al, right? Wasn't
Judo
he
Al,
a judo gimmick too?
I think so. Yep.
Yes, he did.
Yeah, I mean, they turned him into the harmless, like English butler kind of guy, but he was deadly when he wrestled.
Yeah.
Right. I'll tell you, he was terrible at improv, though. He could never have cut it in. He could
Tuesday Night Titans.
Night Titans.
Remember that?
Oh yeah. TNT.
Remember Lord Alfred was under the sheet on the table?
He was the Ed McMahon to Vince McMahon's Johnny Carson on that.
Oh, he totally was.
That's classic right there. That's classic. Another guy that I loved, and this is synonymous with 80s wrestling if you were a fan, Bobby Heenan.
Oh my God.
The guy. The greatest.
This guy, I mean, you didn't need a script with this guy. You talk about improv.
The Alpha and Omega and the everything.
He was great at everything. He was a great wrestler, a great manager, and a great announcer.
He was the weasel. There was no doubt about it. He played that to a T, whether it was, causing chaos in Bockwinkel's matches or behind the mic. This guy, it was so sad that he passed and everything, but he just, what a great guy. What a unbelievable. His contribution to the sport.
An absolute genius.
Yeah. I want to get back to something Phil said here a moment ago that was really a good point, I think, is that, like when Vince would interview Albano, and Albano, I mean, he was a lunatic. Yeah. He was more of a lunatic because Vince just stood there deadpan.
Oh, yeah.
With an occasional look of disgust.
Yes.
But it really accentuated Albano's, lunacy.
I think the look of disgust on Vince McMahon was like, what part of this do I have to edit out before we take this onto the air?
How much did you drink before you came on the air?
That too.
Yep.
Buddy Rogers was not so kind to the captain. I think he called him a piece of disease. He called him, you piece of disease.
You have no money, Jimmy.
Yep. You know what? Even all those years ago, though, you would look at Vince's arms through that coat that he wore.
Oh, dude.
Vince was a big boy. I'm man, he's big.
You remember when King Kong Moscow waffled Pat Patterson with the water with the ice
Vince
pitcher?
Was right there. What are you doing? Yeah.
As a youngster, I was like, why doesn't Vince do something? Vince could probably take it even King Kong Moscow, I think could have done something with.
I think obviously Vince wanted to be a wrestler back then.
Oh, absolutely.
He sure did.
It's
the best part of the water pitcher thing was Moscow almost slipped and broke his skull.
Yeah.
Unbelievable.
A slippery floor in the agricultural hall there.
I said the same thing when he was ripping up when Superstar Billy Graham was ripping up Backlund's title. He was leaning down. What are you doing? What do you think you're doing? What are you doing? I'm like, Vince, just clock this son of a bitch. You're just as big as the guy.
Right.
Absolutely.
I mean, there's a storyline right there. That'll put butts in seats at the Garden next month. Jeez.
No kidding.
Yep. Gordon Soley was the first. Gordon Soley was the first announcer I ever heard because the first wrestling I got to come across was on UHF also, and believe it or not, Florida Championship Wrestling was on one of the Spanish stations, but it was in English.
That's
so weird.
Cool.
It was on very late at night. It was on very late at night, one night during the work week, I guess, or the school week for us back then. Right. And this was the days of Sir Oliver Humperdinck and a wrestler named Mr. Florida and Bugsy McGraw. And of course, Dusty came through. When Dusty would come through, it'd be like, oh my God. But I also remember seeing Steve Kern before he became that pathetic Skinner. You know, which I got to take shots at Steve Kerr. I
know.
Just like that. I can't help it. You know.
Oh my
By
God.
the way, I just want to get this in. What a
Sure.
great interview Mike just gave with Chuck Palumbo.
Oh my God, that was
I tuned into that.
phenomenal.
That was good.
Holy shit.
Yeah,
That was fantastic.
Outstanding.
that was good
That
stuff.
was excellent stuff. I know I'm biased and all, but man,
No,
that was killer.
I really, honestly, and this is not BS. You know, to me, that's what separates this channel from all other channels.
Yeah.
Because very little of that was about wrestling.
Right.
It was a human interview, not a wrestling
Absolutely.
interview. He was talking to the human Chuck Palumbo.
Well, that's where Mike gets all the credit in the world. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Yeah.
years back, I had in mind to do like, you know, a purely wrestling and all of this stuff. And he was like, get the fuck out of here. And then we started talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I can play off this. Absolutely. Let's do it. You know what I mean?
I had a similar interview with Mark. I had a similar interview with Mark Marrow, and we talked 2 seconds of wrestling, and the rest was all about life, positivity, how to balance life, mental, spiritual, all that stuff. I mean, it turned into a great interview. He was a great guest. Yeah, because everybody was like, "Oh, ask him about Sable," and I go, "No one wants to dig up that dirt. I mean, we can read about that, whatever." He even said, "He goes, my divorce is public record. You want to know what happened? Just pull up a file." You know, it was quick, but 45 minutes. I think 2 minutes of wrestling. The rest was all about the just the wellness and the goodness of your heart and that type of stuff. And I love those types of interviews because you think you're going in one direction, and boom, you're going to another one. It's like I love getting
Cactus Jack in ECW had a great spiel about WCW back at that time frame in the mid '90s, and he said through the magic of WCW. A Jewish man from Brooklyn can become a black man from Macon through the magic of WCW. And that's Mark Marrow right there, Johnny B. Bad. Yeah.
Yep.
Hey, guys, I got to pay some bills real quick, so we're going to be right back.
All right.
All righty.
Yes, sir.
The Monty and the Pharaoh Show is brought to you by...
Because wine is your second favorite 4-letter word. California wine... New York attitude. Good fucking wine.
Yeah.
Tired of that same old breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Same old tasting scrambled eggs, burger, that dinner steak, ribs, or pork chops. Why not add a little bit of spice or just a touch of heat to make the difference? Change that scrambled egg with a little bit of Johnny Fabulous's John Cena Sr.'s $1 Million Jalapeno Hot Sauce. Great on burgers, steaks, chops, and those barbecued ribs.
And Nitro's Garage for all your automotive needs. Call 646-675-2349. That's 646-675-2349. For all your automotive needs, Nitro's Garage. Ask for Jack.
Do you treat your dog as part of the family? Well, so do we. So why not celebrate your pup's birthday with the ultimate party box? Check us out on Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook at Party Pup Info, and let us make your pup's party or any celebration perfection.
M&J Video Games and Collectibles. Sport and non-sport cards, wrestling items, autographed items. We buy, sell, and trade. M&J Video Games and Collectibles, located at 1049 Queen Street, Southington, Connecticut. Call us at 1-860-479-9223 or 860-93-GAMES. M&J Video Games and Collectibles.
All right, we are back. We are back to Wrestling Remembered, and we got the crew is in the house. Phil DeCesare, the player, and special guest, the Pharaoh in the house, Jimmy Farrell. Thanks for joining us. This is quite a treat here on Wrestling Remembered. We don't get special guests very often, but when we do, it's got to be
really special.
It's got to be the big one, right? It's got to be him.
Yeah, with special needs. Oh,
yeah. There you go. And as always, shout out to the chat, lively chat again tonight.
Yeah.
Tuning in.
Who's out there?
Now, who's Ibzan?
He's always on Ibzan Arroyo. Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Big Tune is in the house. How about that? Big Tune is here. Jason, Will, and all the Friday night players are here. So
I thought I saw a donation earlier. Was I hallucinating?
Yeah, Baby Cakes put something out there.
Wow, thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, she's been. She found that button. So there it is. She goes. I just learned something I did not know. Cheers to the panel. That was a few minutes ago. So it must have been something we were talking about.
There you go. Baby Cakes rules.
$5. She gave $5. Jeez, there goes dinner tonight. What the hell?
PBJ for what a day later.
I think we got fish. We got fish sticks in the oven. I think no.
Mrs. Paul.
Hey, look, whatever works. At least you're reading.
I know whatever works. Right? Whatever works. So we're talking about wrestling's most memorable voices. We've had a handful so far. I like this one. I got tongue tied for a second. This guy had the legendary voice, and some people say he had the most famous voice of all. And I'm talking about Mean Gene Okerlund.
Oh yeah,
this guy was. I mean, he could have done anything and made it sound like it was the breaking news story of the year, whatever it was. But I didn't know him until he came to the WWF with the Hulk Hogan thing and all that stuff. I think he came aboard a little bit before Hogan. He was teaming up with Vince McMahon for color commentary during Championship Wrestling because
late '83, Joe. Yeah.
83. So I got a taste of who he was then, but. When Cable came along and all that stuff, and you find out, he was with AWA, and I didn't know that. So, pretty good stuff.
I'll tell you, Mean Gene, there was never anybody like him before him, and there's never been anybody like him since him. Nope. Okay, Gene Okerlund could take anybody and make them look like $1 million.
Yeah,
he was the absolute best and most unique of any commentator we're going to talk about tonight.
Yeah.
All right. And Mike and I were very, very blessed and lucky to have met Gene right at the end.
Right.
And I mean
too,
right
Carl.
at the end.
Yeah.
There was a big event several years back.
Yeah.
And there's Gene, and Gene was very gracious and kind, and you could see that it was close. You know what I mean? It was coming.
Was that when he was signing the microphones and all that stuff? Was he doing that gig back then?
Because he may have been, but at this point, Gene was not near his table. Gene was talking with, I can't remember exactly, but I think possibly Valentine was over there. Okay. And it was also the same day that Mike and I got to meet Mil Mascaris. It was a very interesting little.
Did he sell for you, Jimmy?
Did he what?
Did Mil sell for you?
Mil told me that by no means will he sell for anybody ever. So basically, no, I'm making that up. But he's all know that
now, and he still doesn't sell.
Yeah, I mean, and it's a great story. Of course, Mike knows it, so he's probably like, "Oh God, he's telling the story again." But we went to the Garden to watch that infamous Battle Royal where Fuji and Saito were the last two in there, and they bowed to each other and split the money.
Wow!
And the crowd was furious, and I thought to myself, "This is amazing." I'm like, "What a great ending that they did that." But anyway, the person who took us, the kid who we went with, his father took us, and the kid was his favorite wrestler was Mascaris, right? Mascaris went in and got shucked out like immediately, and the friend was crushed.
Oh.
We didn't know at the time that if Mascaris is not going to win, he's not going to work.
Right.
We didn't know that at the time, but now we know it, So, I mean, he was just crushed that Mascaris was eliminated, but Mil was not, a team player, really, from what it sounds like.
I totally forgot about this back in 1987, but the WWF experimented with a female ring announcer, Michael Kathleen McGuirk. I totally forgot about her. And in that 87, I was a senior in high school. So, Missy Beefcake was probably around that time too. So I had no idea. I forgot about her.
Brian Blair's ex-wife.
Is that who that is?
Okay. Yeah.
And does anybody here on the panel recall her? I don't recall.
Vaguely.
Very, very vaguely. It was a few pay-per-views. It was less than a year. They experimented with it. It just didn't come to me. It wasn't memorable to me. I would have remembered it.
I think it was about the time of the Fedorettes, and I think Vince was experimenting a little bit. He loved ladies in tuxedos, and
who was pretty cool. And Benny, maybe you can help me out here with this one because this is a Florida Championship Wrestling memory, and I hope I got the name right. If I don't, forgive me. But there was a woman that did spots named Barbara Cleary. I think. She was fantastic.
Yes, I remember.
She was really good from what I remember her. Was that I did get the name right? She was awesome. I mean, nobody talks about her. Okay, Phil, you know what? You want to put someone in the Hall of Fame for being a groundbreaking, I was the first to do something? I think it should be her.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, if we're going to do stuff like that, I mean, she was way ahead of her time, and she gave good interviews and stuff. I enjoyed it.
You know, real quickly about the Hall of Fame. I know we talked about it last night. Real quick, Jimmy, you mentioned that you pretty much bottom line. You said this Hall of Fame this year sucks going in. You know. Yeah, I stand by that. Yeah. So I started digging around, and there are a lot of people out there now, fans, journalists, everything. They're very, very disappointed in this year's class. No dig against them.
Underwhelming.
Very underwhelming. Yeah, when it's headlined by Paul Heyman, I mean, I feel bad for Heyman if he's the headline of this whole night.
He's not. He's not, because we're not done yet. Because I believe in my heart that Bray Wyatt's going in this year.
It's got to be if his dad's going in. It's got to be.
I believe in my heart that Bray Wyatt is going in, and in a lot of ways, sadly though, he is the headline in a lot of ways. But you know what though? To be fair though, Paul Heyman in Resume is the headline. You know what I'm saying? Paul Heyman is the greatest. It's the longest serving great manager of any day when you really think about it. He's been doing this for decades. I mean, come on. You know, we can love. The only one I'll put above him, and I will put someone above him, is Bobby. But that's the only one I'm doing it for. I'm not putting Albano above Paul Heyman. I can't do it. It doesn't matter how much I love Albano. It doesn't matter how much I love the Grand Wizard. I'm not going to do that. Paul Heyman is the greatest outside of Bobby. Bobby, I'm just very partial to. I always will be, but I think Bobby deserves that biasness from me. Bobby was the greatest, but Paul is the second greatest in my mind. It's like Ruth and Garrick as far as I'm concerned.
Well, Paulie did learn from the captain and from the Wiz and from Blassie, you know, directly.
Yeah, I'm sure we're going to hear those stories during his acceptance speech too. So.
Yeah,
but John will mention this guy in the chat, Jesse the Body.
Yes,
Jesse you knew great. He was talking. You knew he was talking when he was on the mic. I believe Gorilla. I believe Gorilla. You know, that type of stuff. I mean, you talk about
McMahon.
You talk about a colorful color commentator. This guy, you know, probably the best thing that ever happened was that he was forced to retire due to a heart condition, and then they threw him behind the microphone, and magic was made. This guy had a gift.
Phil, I think it's Jack McMahon. He used to call him.
He did, yeah.
Right, Jack McMahon. Listen, Jack McMahon. Yeah,
and that toupee that Vince wore, you would always refer to.
And, you know, I don't think JC could go over as well this nowadays with the cancel culture going on. But you know, Chico Santana, and, you know, that wetback and all this stuff. I'm like, you listen to some of these old tapes.
We called Tito and Tom Zink the Mexican connection.
Yeah.
You know, it's in a way it's kind of sad because the wrestling fans today and the culture we're in today,
they don't know.
Probably think to themselves, what a terrible time you must have lived in. What are you talking about? We all could take shots at each other and we didn't go home and rage about it. Stop it. You know, everybody was able to poke fun at each other. Quite honestly, it was a much healthier world. And I know that makes no sense to people today.
Well, we could all make fun of each other, Jimmy. We all knew Irish jokes and this jokes and that joke. And, I mean,
that's how you knew everybody. That's how you knew her. You got the the Greek on the corner, the mix in town. You know.
That's right. That's right.
Here is a generic joke for us. Okay, we will not insert any race or any ethnicity. Okay.
All right.
I'm going to use the word generic in place. Did you hear about the generic guy who broke his leg while he was raking leaves?
No, what about the generic guy who broke his leg while raking leaves?
He fell from the tree. Substitute your own, you know.
I thought his name was Russell.
What did the generic guy say on his way to the electric chair?
What?
He said, the joke's on you. You got the wrong guy.
There we go. How many generic guys does it take to screw in a light bulb?
How many?
Oh, well, I don't know. It all depended on whoever had the answer for that one. I don't know. I'm trying to keep it generic, Phil.
I hear you, man.
Well, I'm not going to keep it generic because I used to love Magnificent Morocco's promos against Pedro Morales. When he used to come on, I used to go to school. Give me 2 tacos, a cheese enchilada, and a bottle of tequila to go. I'm going to take care of Pedro. I mean, you talk about saying that nowadays. And
the term greaseball that he would use quite frequently. Yes.
Right.
How about Ernie Latta? Who's worse than Ernie Latta defending nationalities?
Oh, yeah. Because that's what sold. That's what it was. That's
even even insulted Bobo Brazil.
Yeah.
Right.
Bobo, take the card away.
Uncle Tom.
What really gets lost too is because patriotism, in my mind, is dead.
Oh yeah.
Okay? Oh yeah.
Back in those days, the reason why Hulk Hogan was a hero was because Russia sucks. Yeah, the Middle East sucks. They don't have our values, and they're completely our enemies. Today's generation wants to be friends with everybody. That's really nice to have that sort of idealism, but it's not realistic.
That's not realistic.
It's just not realistic, So there was a reason why Hulk Hogan was a hero, or why Sergeant Slaughter, when he fought the Sheik, everybody suddenly loved Sergeant Slaughter.
Sure.
Okay, because we grew up, and this might be a little bit of an education for the younger folks. We grew up. Our parents grew up in the shadow of their parents who fought during the World Wars.
Yeah. Greatest generation. Yep.
It was much closer to our time period than these kids know about today.
Yep.
I mean, when we were going to school, do you realize when we were going to school, Hitler was only a couple of decades in the rearview mirror, for God's sake. What are we talking about?
Vietnam was fresh over when I was a kid going to school. It was like, oh, they're talking about Vietnam. Well, that was like years ago. Yeah, like 5 or 6 years ago. You know what I mean? It's like, I shouldn't say the Vietnam War was the conflict or whatever it was.
The 1980s was a wonderful time to be a kid.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was a wonderful time because people don't realize that, all politics aside, here's the facts that when Ronald Reagan came in, our country was definitely hurting. By the time Ronald Reagan was done, our country was once again looking from the top of the mountain,
the shiny hill, baby,
without invading, without starting world wars, without profiling and all this other garbage. I mean, I'm sorry, that's what happened. That's the way it was.
And everybody made fun of politicians on late night, and it was funny. It was funny. Music videos made fun of politicians because it was funny. It wasn't like, we're trying to cancel you or sway your vote or whatever. It was just funny. I watched Johnny Carson clips, and they're constantly, ranking on Carter and Nixon and Reagan and all. Reagan was probably the most that people did.
Oh, absolutely.
The comedian Rich Little, he made a living imitating presidents.
Yeah. Exactly.
What about the Genesis video where Reagan pushes the button?
Land of Confusion.
Great video. Yeah.
Waking up from a wet dream. He's waking up in a wet dream. Yeah, that won an award. I think that won an award.
Well, I mean, listen to the words in there. Superman, where are you now? And everything wrong somehow. I mean, it was just and
the man of steel, the man of power, losing control by the hour. Yeah.
Oh my God.
I think in 1984-85, if Hulk Hogan ran for president, he probably would have freaking won.
Hey, Sergeant Slaughter was invited to the White House, remember, by Reagan, too. So let me tell you, these guys were cultural icons. I mean, they
wrestling too. Mr. Wrestling too met Jimmy Carter, and I was like, whoa, a wrestler in the White House?
Right.
You're kidding me. Wow.
Well, you know what? I got to throw this in. I'm sure Karen's watching inside. I don't know if you guys knew this, but George Bush Sr. was Wahoo McDaniel's baseball coach.
Yeah.
When he was a kid. So basically, years and years later, Wahoo got invited to the White House, and Flair wanted him to go because Flair, of course, was like, "Oh, I'm going. Of course, I'm going." Blah 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 blah. And Wahoo didn't go. You know why? Because Wahoo went fishing. That's why.
Wow.
Oh, gotta love it.
Wahoo was like, "I don't. What am I going to? I want to go fishing. I'm off this. I got a couple of days off, and I want to go do what I enjoy. I don't need to go to some stupid thing, wear a suit, have over caviar or whatever. That wasn't Wahoo, not from what I've gathered.
Right.
So I found that hilarious that he'd rather go fishing.
Yeah,
it is pretty funny.
That's awesome.
You knew had a very distinct voice, and you knew she was coming when she was approaching the microphone. Was Luna Vachon.
Oh my God,
Luna. She had a voice, man. I don't know. Did she fake that voice? Do you know of? I didn't know her personally, but
no, I don't.
She had such a.
It was similar, but it was just turned up. I think she kind of had that. that scratchy, growly voice to begin with.
Yep.
Yeah,
Then,
well, I remember Gangrel because we had him on several times. A really good guy, by the way.
Yeah.
Great guy.
Yep.
And you know, I think that she might have been pretty heavy with smoking, perhaps. I don't know.
Really? Okay.
You know, I'm really not completely sure, but you know, obviously her health wasn't the greatest by the end. She didn't last as long as she could have or should have.
Yeah.
Speaking of a screamer, who can forget Sherry Martel?
Great.
I mean, he could
Just
scream
great.
and act.
Oh, look at that first picture, man.
Yeah,
Wow.
He was like,
Right.
I saw her in a cage match similar to that in '92, and the Ultimate Warrior threw her off the cage, and I'm like, she's taking bumps. I know she was a wrestler, but this is before, you know, all that stuff. So it's crazy. It's
all right, guys, I'm gonna break a little character here for a second and take off my gimmick. I'm gonna take off my gimmick.
Oh, he's got
We have. I don't know if you can see this, but this Karen just gave this to me. Let me go this
there
way.
you go.
Yeah.
That's George Bush. That's George Bush Sr. And it says here to Wahoo McDaniel from his former coach, baseball, that is, with warm regards, George Bush.
Damn.
So there you go, right there. And then a little. What does that say right there? You went fishing. Fuck you. What the hell? No, he doesn't say that.
You went fishing.
Good stuff.
That's
awesome.
great.
That's awesome. I love that stuff. Yep.
Great. Wow, I look really tired. What the fuck? Gimmick back on.
You look you look like you missed a flight or something. Or a flight got canceled.
Oh, that's very funny there, Lowry. That's very funny. That's good. This is why I like What a Day. He's sharp. He's a pretty fart smeller.
There you
go. Smart fella.
Here's another old AWA guy who went over the WWF, Ken Resnick.
Without the mustache.
Yep, he had a TV voice, man. You could. I mean, this is when the WWF was really growing, and you know, in those mid '80s days, it seems like they had announcers like Sean Mooney, Resnick, all these guys.
Yeah, Ken Resnick also. We were able to see Pro Wrestling USA for a spell. Up here too with the NWA and AWA, and Ken Resnick was the voice of the show from what I remember.
He had a great wrestling voice.
Am I crazy? But wasn't Sean Mooney pretty damn good at what he did?
He was. He was an actual news guy. He went on to broadcast news after that.
Yeah.
He knew his stuff. They treated him like a news guy. He was always in the control room. He was always They had that news element. And that's probably why I got addicted to that type of stuff, because I love that element of wrestling, the news, the control room,
the realism
of it all. You know, and I love that aspect of it. So,
hey, and tell you what, I'm shocked. We're 58 minutes in, and nobody's mentioned good old JR.
What are you talking about? He's next on my list. But boom.
All right,
there you go. There you go.
Universal Wrestling Federation, UWF, he started out in, right?
Mid-South,
all those places.
He was a referee in Mid-South.
Yes, he was.
That's right, he was.
Yes,
he was a referee. Yep, good old JR.
Even before Bill Watts, like the McGurk.
Leroy McGurk, right?
Yeah.
Yep. I mean,
well, after Gordon Soley, JR is obviously next, or you know, he could even be neck and neck with him. You know, I mean, I can see people saying that.
JR, Soley, and Lance Russell are my top 3.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, right,
and then,
right.
You know, World Class Championship Wrestling from Texas. Who could forget Mark Lawrence
and Bill Mercer? Good.
And
the sleep hold.
The Bill Mercer photo, because I thought of him when I thought of Mark Lawrence. But yeah, Bill Mercer.
Both are still alive too. You know, which is amazing. Bill Mercer's in his 90s, still pretty sharp too.
And Bill Mercer.
Phil, it's time to take your roids. Your clock is going.
There it is. It's the Undertaker's in the house, right?
I'm sorry, Phil. I can't help it.
It's all good.
Yeah, so those guys, I mean, I don't know who else we could possibly mention. I mean, there's just so many of them. I got as many as I could together.
Staggerly Marshall.
This guy's still alive from Mid-Atlantic, Bob Caudle.
Bob Caudle.
I think he's in his 90s as well.
He is also still alive and well, and that's so gratifying to know.
It's too bad we're regulated back then, because you know all of us, most of us, were regulated to WWF programming because of the Northeast.
Right.
And then when you get a hold of Gordon, people that listen to Gordon Soley and Lance Russell and all those guys, and it's like, wow, that's what drew me to those things. You know, living out of the wrestling magazines for a year was fun, but when cable finally hit and I could finally hear these guys, oh man,
right,
it was a whole new
different level.
whole different element.
JR's announcing during, of course, the infamous Undertaker Foley match. That really sums it up. I mean, as far as
he
JR,
sold that. I mean, if the stunt itself didn't sell it, but when him say, "Will somebody in the back get off their damn butts?"
Yep.
Oh my God, he's dead. You know, it's like
Yep.
at first you fall for it, but if it was really that real, I think JR and Jerry the King probably would have got up and seen what the hell was going on. I felt bad for the Spanish announce team took a beating on that one. So
Yep. Now I'm surprised nobody's mentioned it because I think it gets a bad rap and people are bitter because of the circumstances around this. But I thought Vince and Macho Man did a pretty damn good job together.
Yeah,
I
did.
mean,
Absolutely.
They did.
Macho Man should be talked about here. What did you guys think about Macho Man as a color commentator?
Yeah, especially in the early days of Monday Night Raw. Certainly, he was. He was quite good.
Another guy on the microphone, you heard his voice, and boom, you knew who he was. It's like, that's Macho Man. Whether or not it was Slim Jim or post Slim Jim. So,
and somebody else we really definitely should talk about because I've always enjoyed his announcing is Tony Schiavone. Okay,
Tony Sinan, yep.
Tony Schiavone is a damn good announcer because he relays excitement very well. And he always did.
I still feel bad for him because he was told by Bischoff to tell everybody to don't turn the damn channel because some guy McFoley's going to win the title.
It's not his fault.
It's not his fault. He was just the messenger, and he took such flack. It was almost similar to Bill Buckner back in '86. Same thing. Buckner took so much flack until '04, and they finally gave him a ring just to
I was at the Worcester. It was at the Worcester Centrum the night that Mick Foley won the title.
Oh, 99.
Snowy night in '99.
Yo, Adrian.
Wow. You know what, Phil? Phil, I think you were part. If it's the match I'm thinking of, I think you probably heard the loudest pop.
Yep.
Oh my
in
God.
the history of this business.
There's no doubt about it.
It was such a shock.
I mean, am I remembering this correctly? Stone Cold came out.
Yeah,
they had everybody out there. They had all the main eventers out there. Shamrock, DX, everybody. McMahon were out there. Oh yeah.
But the roar when Austin came out was the loudest thing I think I've ever heard.
I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it.
That's happening right now. I'm like the Rock. Can I go like this?
Yeah, there you go.
You know, I mean,
my hairs are standing up. Yeah,
I don't think you'll ever see another pop like that. You can try. I know the CM Punk thing at the Rumble and
that was great.
Survivor Series, but like I don't know, The Rock on SmackDown a few weeks ago. You know,
that surprise, that element of surprise that we miss. We really miss now.
Yeah,
right. Well, let me tell you, I got to get this in too, since we're talking about that moment with Austin. I just read. Oh God, here I go. I just read Mercedes Moné say, "I felt like Stone Cold Steve Austin the other night." Shut the fuck up. What the fuck makes you think for even a second that you even experienced a sliver?
$4.5 million a year. That's why she thinks like that.
You know what? I got to get Phil's opinion on this. Phil, what do you think? What do you think when you hear Mercedes Moné go, "Well, I felt like Stone Cold Steve Austin"? How clueless is this generation?
Yeah, it befuddles me because she couldn't be anything further from Stone Cold Steve Austin in any way, and
no way,
no.
I mean, I had friends in Boston watching that whole thing unravel the other night. And if it wasn't for the CEO blaring, the music blaring over that, everybody was chanting, but it wasn't Stone Cold level. It wasn't Hulk Hogan beating the Iron Sheik level. It was none of that. It was nowhere near that.
The Milkman.
Right.
Jake Milligan.
People may forget this one because it's not important or legendary or anything like that, but it's at the end of Hogan's WWE career. Okay.
Yeah.
And our good buddy Eugene, it was a WrestleMania, and Eugene came out, and then Muhammad, this poor guy who played his role fantastic, Muhammad Hassan came out and started to beat down Eugene, and then Hogan's music hit.
Yeah.
And the place absolutely exploded, louder than anything I hear today. And this is Hogan at the very, very end. I mean, it's just amazing that the old school stars had that kind of reaction.
What was it? The Raw after WrestleMania 2002 in Montreal, whatever it was. The 10-minute standing ovation they gave Hogan. It was like that's when the Raws After Money became popular. Like they put on their own show outside of that.
And what's even more remarkable, Joe, about that is that it happened in Montreal, where it's like what do they call it up there? It's totally like the opposite. There's a term. It's out of a Superman comic, but everything is opposite up there. You know,
Bizarro
it's just
world.
Bizarro world. Thank you.
Bizarro
Yes.
Bizarro
Yes, that's exactly what it is.
I mean, you don't see that. I mean, I'm mortified that she would comment and say that. I mean, there's just no comparison. Unless she's trying to rope in the new generation, it's just not happening.
I got news for you, Mercedes Monet. When Linda McMahon got up out of the chair at that WrestleMania to kick Vince in the nuts was 30,000 times louder than anything you'll ever hear, Sasha.
Yeah.
Okay, so I mean, stop it already.
Yeah.
She's no bionic redneck, that's for sure.
Yeah. I was at the TD Garden the night. I was at the TD Garden the night of Undertaker putting Stephanie on the cross.
Wow.
And then, Stone Cold's music, even though it was another Stone Cold thing, but the surprise element.
Crazy.
My son went home, was like, my ears are ringing. My ears. I go, that's how I went home once a month every Saturday from the Garden.
Yeah.
From your ears ringing. And
I got to admit, though, I was never a big fan of these crucifixions.
No, definitely not.
What are you doing? What are you doing?
Yeah.
Whether you have a true belief in religion or not,
pushing the envelope.
It's factual that there was a preacher from Nazareth who was murdered that way. Okay, so I mean, what on earth are we doing sometimes? But all right, whatever.
It's crazy, absolutely crazy. Yeah, I mean, my son, we saw Edge and Hogan win the tag belts at a SmackDown taping at the Garden, and he went home with his ears ringing. He was like 10, 11 years old, and he's like, my ears are ringing, my ears are. I go, that's how it used to be with Hulkamania. You went home.
Not only ears ringing, Joe, but hoarse from screaming.
Oh, yeah, screaming. Forget about it. Yep.
What about when the name Jericho came across the Titantron in 1999? You want to talk about an explosion?
I still revisit that moment every once in a while. It's amazing because you know what? There was such a buildup for that.
Yep.
It was awesome.
And you kind of you didn't know though. You didn't know it was him back then. I mean, the internet was new.
Right.
All that stuff.
There were options. You thought it might be a few people, but you weren't sure. No one was telling you who was in the building that night and who was seen at the restaurant 10 hours before.
What amazed me is like he was the hottest free agent back then in '99 when he left WCW and nobody knew where he was going, and Vince wanted him bad.
Absolutely, and you know what? This is the funniest part to me. The independent marks and the anti-WWE marks love to glorify WCW. You know what, fellas? WCW never knew what they had in Chris Jericho. But Vince McMahon, and I remember when I heard the rumors that Jericho might be coming to Vince, I prayed for whatever it's worth as a wrestling fan, I prayed that Vince would realize who he was getting. So when the music hit and his first program is with The Rock, I was all elated. I was like, Vince gets it.
Yeah, he got it. He did.
He gets it. He gets it. And people don't understand that when he won that war, he took guys that were not main event and made them main event. Stone Cold never got that shot in the other companies. He never did. The Rock had a bit of a struggle, but at first, The Rock obviously got to where he got to because Vince had big ideas for big auras. He knew how to get the most out of somebody.
He had that vision. He knew what it could be, and
look what he did with Foley. I mean, we're talking about Foley. Look what he did with Foley. Foley wouldn't be who he is today without Vince. Get out of here,
Foley was just about all done in WC. Like they wanted him off. They wanted his no career after that, and then Vince says, "I'll take you." And look what he did with
Mean Mark.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, well, Vince specialized in, the more raw the clay was, the better he was able to mold that clay into something larger than life. And
to give credit to Vince too, sometimes guys don't have, like for example, some guys don't have the Hogan aura or the Rock aura or whatever, but he holds the course with wrestlers a lot of the time, and it does pay off. And here's two examples as to where they clearly don't have a Hulk Hogan aura or a Rock aura or a Ric Flair aura to them. Okay, Roman Reigns is one, and Randy Orton is another.
Yeah.
Okay. These guys are not exactly magic on the mic,
Right.
But over the years, because he stayed the course, he didn't sit there and worry about what the internet had to say. And that's his greatest, in my opinion, it's one of his greatest characteristics. Is that he did know better. He knew better. And that's why Roman Reigns is now the biggest star in the business. That's why Randy Orton, it's funny how long it took Randy Orton to get true appreciation from the WWE universe. True adulation. It took forever, but we're there now.
I think I could say the same thing with Roman Reigns. 7-8 years ago, they were trying to push Roman Reigns as the next big thing. I remember going to house shows. They were booing him. Raw shows, they were booing him. It just wasn't working out. Then he won the Rumble, like 3 years in a row or something like that? That crazy stuff. And, and then all of a sudden, I don't know what it is, that bloodline story hit a couple of years ago. And I said, this is what Vince was waiting for, this moment
I'll tell you what it is, okay? The reason why the bloodline exploded was because of all those years. You see, Roman was never booked as a scrub.
No.
Okay? Whether we liked it or not, Roman was being protected all those years. Okay? The Shield, I'm sorry, you could boo Roman. I loved Roman from day one. I'm one of them. All right? I loved him from day one. I loved the Shield. The Shield is one of the greatest factions, in my opinion, in the history of this business. And half the time we were, not me, but we were booing him. And I'm going to myself, are you serious? This is the muscle of one of the best factions of the last 20 years. What are you looking at, guys? What are you seeing here that I obviously don't see? Thank God I didn't see what they saw. Otherwise, we don't have what we have today. It's the same thing with Randy. There was plenty of times where the fans were like, oh, no, John Cena and Randy Orton again? Again. Because they're great. And they had a great – if Randy Orton is not John Cena's Joker, I don't know who is.
Yeah.
To John's Batman.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's
a great rivalry, period.
I think Vince has that talent of – knowing what the wrestler's limits are, whether it's on the mic and in the ring, and doing the utmost that they can with that. And, we just lost Hall of Fame, a guy who, Virgil.
Right.
He was very limited in what he could do.
Yes.
But he did it to the best of his ability, and it was really good. The guy was just a bodyguard. That's all he was. That's and that's what he did. And then, to go into that SummerSlam match against Ted DiBiase with no wrestling experience at all. Jerry the King Lawler was the one that helped train him. And he worked his absolute butt off to put on a very generic match. But he did what he was supposed to do, and he was a bodyguard, and that's it. And that's what Vince had that talent. He knew what your limit was. He knew, he wanted, of course, he wanted you to go past your limits, but he knew when enough was enough. Okay, this is as far as we can go. Let's see what we can do with that.
Right,
and that's where it's missed right now.
The same could be said for Triple H. There was plenty of times over the years, fans. I don't like Triple H. Blah 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 blah. Triple H is a legend. What are you talking about? Triple H is a legend. And by the way, Virgil. Getting back to him real quick. Virgil was a specialist. Okay, and a Hall of Fame level specialist, because how many people even do the role that Virgil did? All right. Virgil was one of a kind as far as his specialist is, what he did. He is more worthy of being a WWE Hall of Famer than 2/3 of this year's class.
Yep. No, you're
That's
absolutely
my
right.
opinion on that.
I totally agree. I mean, I don't know. I just don't see, I'm going back to this year's Hall of Fame class. I'm just not, I don't even know if I'm going to watch it, to be honest with you, but
right.
I'm hoping for another Bret Hart takedown like they did, right before COVID when that went down.
I'll tell you, they want to cause some real ruffles. They should put Brock Lesnar in this year. That'd be hilarious.
Well, my feeling, I think he's the one that's going to induct Paul Heyman. I know you said CM Punk last night, but you want to draw up, take a blah Hall of Fame and kick it up a couple of notches, and that could be the recipe right there. So who knows? Who knows? Who knows? I saw something about the 86 Red Sox in this chat. I don't know how the hell that came in there. That's part of my Bill Buckner reference. My Bill Buckner reference. Yeah, here we go.
Bill Buckner was a fantastic ball player.
Sure he was. Yeah, remember for just one.
I know.
And again, it's a team effort,
Yeah.
It's a
You
team
can thank
effort,
that-
and
sorry, Joe, but you could thank that dumbass manager for doing that.
Who, McNamara?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was
Yeah.
fired the next year, I think, right? Joe Morgan came in right after
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I know he meant well, but you really do. You got to be smart and put in your best defensively. You're trying to win the World Series for the first time since 1918. What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, I think I think a lot of that had to do with Buckner saying he wanted to stay in or something like that. There was always this crazy. I don't know how true that is. I've heard so many stories, but that's over and done with. Thank God.
Yeah. Well, there you go. There you go.
Any other memorable voices you guys can think of real quick before we leave?
Well, I think we've really covered a lot of them. If somebody could pull out another name, I'll be impressed. I mean,
Lee Marshall, I wanted to say, became the voice of Tony the Tiger. Talk about landing a great gig,
Really?
He also was the announcer.
Right.
Yeah.
Didn't he just die, though? Didn't he just die?
Yeah, he died. Not too well. He died a little while ago. At a relatively young age, too, sadly.
I thought a 96-year-old guy did that.
But the 96-year-old guy was replaced by Lee Marshall.
Oh, okay.
A hell of a gig, man. Lee Marshall also was the ring announcer at WrestleMania 2 when they were out in LA for that portion. And he did a little cup of coffee with WWF, and obviously we knew him from AWA and then WCW, and definitely a memorable guy. Very briefly.
I can't be completely. It is factual that King Kong Bundy's not in the hall, right?
I don't believe he is.
What is that?
I mean,
you say WrestleMania 2, and I think because Mike was at WrestleMania 2, he loves that WrestleMania, even though the public doesn't seem to. But how is King Kong Bundy not in the Hall of Fame? What's going on there?
He is not in the Hall of Fame. No.
Wow,
that's surprising. It really is.
Wow, Benny, what do you say about that with King Kong Bundy? What do you think?
My opinion, though, and I hope I'm right, is that in the next couple of years, I'm really hoping we get to see a lot of the wrongs get righted of people who have been neglected in the past.
Yeah,
and I'd like to see a commitment to actually build a building.
At the rate we're going right now, I don't think we're going to see anybody significant like that in a while. I mean, if they do this again next year, this type of class, Tony Gurria, Rick Martel, Ivan Koloff, 3 names right off the bat that are way overdue for a Hall of Fame nod. And okay.
Well, I'll tell you, Rick Martel should be in. I'm sorry, Rick Martel,
world champion. He was a former world champion, 2-time tag champion. I mean, the model. Then he came back as the model. I mean, you talk about a guy who had to reinvent himself. You talk about an old-time wrestler who had to reinvent himself to fit in with Vince's circus, and they throw the model gimmick at him, and he did it again. Vince seeing what he could do, and he took it to the next level, and it was like, that's amazing.
He was fantastic.
I was shocked. I never thought Rick Martel could pull off the heel thing.
He did.
Yeah.
He did. He was fabulous at it. He was fabulous at it.
He turned on Tom Zenk, right? Didn't he turn on?
No, he turned on Tito.
He turned on Tito. Yeah. Tom Zenk left.
Is that Strike Force?
Strike Force. Yeah.
Yes. Arriba.
Wow. Yeah. I want to get this in too because it really gets lost. Vince, of course, is constantly I obviously. I love Vince, okay?
Sure.
It's no secret. I love Vince McMahon. I don't know him as a person, and I don't give a shit. Whatever he does, if he ever gets convicted of something, I'll probably change my mind. But until I see him convicted of something, I'm not changing my mind about the man. Everything is hearsay to me until there's a conviction. I'm sorry. I believe in the system. I believe in due process. Yeah. But as far as this goes, they love to say that Vince would never, ever put over someone from another organization to be at the very top of his company because it wasn't his. Well, then how do you explain that when the world titles were finally unified, that Chris Jericho, a WCW product, an ECW product, beat The Rock and Stone Cold Steve Austin on the same night to unify the belts?
Short memories. That's what they have. Short memories.
What is that? Benny, you're a traditionalist. You're probably the most traditionalist guy here, and I say that with nothing but respect. What did you think the night that Jericho won the world title? Were you surprised?
I was surprised, but I didn't mind. I thought it was great.
Of course not. Of course not. Right?
That was in Seattle, right? Safeco Field, WrestleMania.
Well, how about they put the belt on Benoit? They put it on Eddie Guerrero. Both both WCW guys.
Right.
It's monumental stuff right there. So I mean, Vince did what was good for business. He knew what was going on. He was very very keen. Everyone thinks, oh, he's getting old and all that stuff. He's like that guy that may fail at everything in his life, but when it comes to wrestling and his baby, shop as attack. Shop as attack. And I mentioned Johnny Most was my broadcasting school teacher. The Bulls and the Pistons of the Bulls and the Lakers were in the finals.
Lambier.
And everybody's asking Johnny, what do you think? He couldn't carry outside of teaching. He really was losing his mind. But when he started talking basketball and he said they got to switch up Magic and Jordan, they got to switch that around. As soon as they did that, the Bulls won their title. I was like, that guy. I mean, that's Vince McMahon stuff. Vince might not have everything under control in his personal life, but boom, when it comes to that, he's all he knows his stuff. If I were to seek out wrestling advice, I would still call Vince McMahon and be like, look.
And by all accounts, even if somebody had wronged him in the past, if he thought that he could make money with that person in the future, he'd bring him back.
Billy Graham,
Hogan.
Ultimate Warrior. What was that all about? Right. These are guys. Even Bruno kind of they crossed paths in the early '90s, and he's still winning the Hall of Fame. I mean, Vince knows,
Right.
Take away all the side bullshit. He knows. He knows what to do in this business, and I still wouldn't put it past Triple H and all them if he's somehow on the other, other end of the phone. Certain nights when they have a question on what to do, and they're looking for an opinion. So you never know.
I'll tell you what, though, too, like, Benny said, well, hopefully in the next few years, a lot of wrongs will be righted. Here's my concern about that. Okay. A lot of the, the I hate Vince McMahon cult people, and who I'm talking at right now. Okay. Mr. IP Freely Cole. Okay. All right. Using the word cult with people who have the nerve to enjoy what Vince has given to us as fans. Fuck you. All right. I'm very concerned. These same people who are now rooting for Triple H, because I am going somewhere with this, Benny. The people who are rooting for Triple H to be removed because he must have known everything and all this other horse shit, that we don't have any proof of. I'm very worried. Because if Triple H is removed, or if Triple H they decide to get away from, who is going to make with the new ownership and stuff? Who is going to make those educated wrestling, ideas to go back and put an Ivan Koloff in? Because I know Triple H probably feels that Ivan Koloff should be. Triple H is no fool. Triple H loves wrestling. He was a wrestler.
It's going to be consultants, guys in suits now. That's what's going to happen.
I'm very worried about that. So I'm scared that, you got to be careful sometimes, because, you don't know who's going to be running it. And it's not something I'm really looking forward to. As long as Triple H is there, I feel comfortable.
Yeah. For sure.
And I think a lot of the wrestlers or the sports entertainers, whatever you want to call them now, I feel the same way. He's that guy that, okay, at least he's still here. At least we have a shot. There's some legitimacy. It's good for the confidence. But you're right, Jimmy. This does pose a question. What if the day after WrestleMania, the axe falls on everything? You know what I mean? Like, boom. Anybody affiliated with Vince McMahon, you're out.
Right.
To the point where they freaking closed up the office in Stamford, Connecticut, and they put everything under the UFC umbrella or something. I don't know. I'm just saying, though. Yeah, I am worried about that.
And unlike the frat boys that run, AEW, okay, because they do, Triple H does not get enough respect as a businessman. Who do you think he learned from?
Of course.
All right, so I want Triple H to stay right where he is for the good of the sport. I want him to stay right where he is. Be careful what you ask for, folks, because you just might get it.
Yeah, I agree. And
real quick, on the topic of that other guy who's got three eyes after his name, who's always, on a jihad and who always speaks a lot but says really very little.
Yeah.
For the first time ever in all my years, this guy was very critical of Vince Sr., and that just blew my mind, because I've never heard an account from anyone who had anything remotely negative to say about Vince McMahon Sr.'s character, his operations, and anything that happened in that era. So I was really kind of shocked by what this guy was saying, and again, alluding to a lot of things, but never saying anything.
Wasn't that when you go back to the Vince Senior days and all that stuff? I'm talking obviously pre-82 and all that stuff.
Sure.
I was a fan then. I went to shows then when it was Vince Senior in charge.
It was more business-like though back then too.
Right.
You know, it wasn't entertaining and all. I get all that stuff, but on the inside, everything was done either with a handshake or a contract or goodwill. It was like, and nobody crossed anybody. And if they did, you were blacklisted. You were blackballed. You know.
Right.
So yeah. I have heard stories that Vince Senior could be that guy at times where if you screw me, you know, we're done. I'm never going to talk to you ever again.
He was a businessman.
But that's good business.
Yeah, that's good business. But some people think that, he wasn't a fair player, or, you know, that's this, you know, people separate, you know, people have a hard time separating personal and business. You know, I love you, but it's business. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, and he's the one that came up with the Andre the Giant needs to be undefeated gimmick. You know, Andre was getting clubbed in Canada and all that stuff, and he was getting pinned and body slammed. And Vince Senior is like, not when he comes here, he's going to be undefeated. And he made every territory that booked Andre after that. I think it was after 74. Everybody that booked Andre, he does not lose. He does not get pinned.
Well,
he does not lose.
If it were a shoot, that would be the case anyway.
But
I'll tell you, nobody on this panel knows better than Benny. So Benny, you tell us during the years, because you saw things that we weren't even watching wrestling yet, and you were probably watching for a decade at least.
Sure, yeah.
We had a chance to probably. So I mean, were you ever bored with Vince McMahon Sr.'s presentations? I mean, some of the crap I hear about, you know, Vince McMahon Sr. played it too safe, guys held the belt too long. As a fan, how did you remember the WWW?
I can, you know, there's probably 100 adjectives that describe how I felt as a fan growing up on Long Island in the 70s and, you know, even the late 60s. Bored would never come into the conversation, ever.
Right.
Ever.
Right. You witnessed Bruno Sammartino during all those years. Did you ever root for someone else to take the belt off him, or was it just as every month though? It seemed like a legitimate challenger was being presented, right?
It was such a simple formula. You know, you bring in a new heel from one of the other territories, you know, and then then he'd come in and he'd squash maybe Arnold Skolin. You know, then maybe work up to Dominic DeNucci, you know, beat him, you know, maybe, you know, attack Bruno during an interview. Next thing you know, they're selling out the Garden. And if it was a really good match, they do it maybe one or two more times. And they did that for like 20 years between Bruno, Pedro, and Backlund. It was all the same formula, but you know what? It worked.
Right.
Now, here's one, Joe, I got to throw this one out there. Tell me what you guys think about this. Okay. After Vince McMahon, I believe that the most ingenious man behind the scenes in the history of this business is Pat Patterson. Is there something wrong with that?
No, that's a good analogy. I know what you're saying. I mean, to what degree? As a guy behind the scenes,
as a creative guy.
Oh yeah, definitely.
That always seemed to know how to push the right buttons. Never mind the fact that as a wrestler, I think that's completely swept under the carpet at this point. You know, I mean, Pat Patterson, the wrestler, sold out. You know, Fort Backlund four times in a row as a heel.
You know what I mean? But he also had that nationwide experience wrestling in the AWA, NWA, and all that stuff, and international. So, you know, you want to throw a storyline at him, and he'll spruce it up. Sure, I'm sure. Yeah, that's a good. I would agree with that.
I honestly feel like Pat Patterson was a finer mind than Vern Gagne. I'm sorry if that drives people crazy, but that's how I feel about that. Pat Patterson.
I don't think it's even close. I mean, I think Pat Patterson was way more creative than Vern Gagne.
Thank you. I feel better. For a second there, I thought I was like, about to make myself look like an idiot, but I don't think so. I really do think Pat Patterson was that great of a mind, and Vince valued him immeasurably. There'll
be no Royal Rumble without Pat Patterson. It was
two years after that Bockwinkel Hogan screw job. You know where they were wrestling on the day of WrestleMania? The AWA was wrestling at Boylan Catholic High School.
Sure. There you go.
And lest we not forget that Vern Gagne was very concerned that the name, the Midnight Rockers, would conjure images of old men in rocking chairs and didn't want to go with that name.
Clueless.
Yeah, but in the meantime, he wins the title for himself when he's 55. That's okay.
Right.
But
that's all right, Benny. He looks 65 though.
Right,
that's called limited vision. That's called
and
limited
as much
vision.
respect as I have for Nick Bockwinkel, even though I know Mike cannot stand Nick Bockwinkel. But I mean, what are you doing having a 45-year-old Nick Bockwinkel holding the belt while you have Hulk Hogan in your territory? Are you a complete moron?
Bockwinkel was almost 49 when they had that match in 1983. Hogan was like 29.
There you go, right there.
To watch that match, I watch that occasionally on YouTube and watch the crowd and Gene Okerlund telling everybody to calm down because they're throwing everything in the ring and Hogan's got to calm down. You got a show that hot, you could ride that for years. They just dropped
that. To me, that was the single most lousiest booking decision ever.
It made no sense. It made absolute zero sense.
I'll tell you something else too. Why does AEW get the reputation from the fans that this is what's right about wrestling? You do realize Samoa Joe just beat Wardlow.
Yeah.
Okay. You're going to tell me with a straight face that that's the future. This is the future. This company is the future, and we're all about giving fresh faces a chance and all that. You guys are so full of shit out there.
It's 5 years ago when they started, they were like that. They could have done something. Then the COVID years hit and all that stuff. But ever since, I don't know what it is with Tony Khan. I think he's the biggest mark out there. I think he's more of a fan than he is a booker because you bring back CM Punk and you got the crowd, you got everybody. And to allow a situation, whatever it was backstage, I'm here, it was close to now nothing that happened backstage between him and Jack Perry. And then you lose the guy to the WWE a year later. It's like, what's he going to, this is why I'm worried about Mercedes Moné. Is this the height of her career now? The big return in Boston? What happens now? What is next? She's battled half the women in the division. They're all ex-WWE wrestlers. They're all, they all have crossed each other's paths at one point or another. But let's take out a $4.5 million girl you just signed, who's by the way, 32 years old at the prime of her career, and let's put her in the ring against a girl named Willow. I mean, come on. I mean, really, if you really paid her that kind of money, I would have taken Tony Storm. I would have took that title, and then I would have demanded a match that night and won the title and let the Mercedes Moné era really, really begin.
Absolutely.
Then, you know what I mean? Now you're going to have this. You're going to be, and I'm worried if she's healthy enough to be in the ring. She hasn't had a match in so long. I know she's worked out and all that stuff.
Right.
The last time she had a match, she broke her ankle. So.
Yep.
Where are we there? Where are we there?
She's dangerous. Quite honestly, she's dangerous. She'll either hurt herself, like I think Benny said it a couple of shows ago.
She either hurts somebody or hurts herself. Yep.
Right. Exactly. And you know what? You know what her greatest moment was? And I hope I've got this right. If I don't, I should smoke more weed. But
do that anyway.
I believe her greatest moment. I'm going back years now, but it was when they were actually really known as the Four Horsewomen. When Bayley and Sasha Banks fought at the Barclays Center. In NXT. Do I have this right? That match was like, you know what? Women can wrestle, baby.
That was the night before WrestleMania, right? The night before WrestleMania?
Yeah, I believe so. The takeover. In the early days of the takeover. Yeah.
Those are the matches why I started watching NXT.
Right.
Those are the matches right there. When I saw them wrestle like that, I'm like, okay, they're on to something now. And then, she mentioned the women's evolution on AEW the night. I'm like, yeah, you were part of that in the WWE, not in AEW. Don't be going down that path. Stephanie McMahon called you out there and said, welcome to the new women's evolution. They were part of it. And now you just ruined it.
Right.
And while you're saying that, there are 3 current WWE women up in the rafters watching you, and it's like this makes no sense. Like,
and you want to know what? It's funny, like if somebody even types a simple knock on us as people, in my case, especially in the old days, now not so much, but it bothers you, and you get all crazy about it, and you get you get thrown off your juju or whatever. Do you realize how many times Vince McMahon has had to turn on a television set and watch people that he made famous and wealthy fuck him?
Yeah.
Do you have any idea how many times did it ever make him waver from his game plans? Did it ever make him take his eye off the road? No. What an incredible, balls of steel. What a genetic jackhammer.
Yes.
I mean, my God, how do you have that kind of makeup where you can Makes so many people wealthy, and there's no gratitude. There's none.
I know, it's horrible. It's horrible.
To me, it's fucked up.
But as I say, this too shall pass, and he'll probably be in the Hall of Fame in the next 5 years. Vince McMahon, you never know.
Oh God!
If there's
I'd
ever,
like to say he built the Hall of Fame, but there's no building.
Well, isn't there a Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame? There's somewhere, right? They just reopened it. I want to
There's
say
one upstate New York.
Yeah, they've relocated it, right? It used to be in the Midwest, and they moved over there.
International Professional Wrestling Hall of Fame.
That's the closest you can get to it. So, I mean,
let me guess. People like Meltzer are in that one or something, or what?
No, I think there's a lot of legitimate characters in that.
Okay, all right.
I want to say Cowboy Bill Watts has something to do with that.
Okay, all right.
I think he has something to do with that, from what I remember. I had a friend. Ironically, I had a friend in high school who relocated somewhere where the Hall of Fame is now, and she went to it, and she was sending me pictures one year.
Well, it was upstate New York. They relocated it to Wichita Falls, Texas.
There you go.
But I think that one closed down.
Yep.
And they reopened one upstate New York.
Yeah, it was going back and forth. They actually built a building in the Texas one. She was showing pictures. She did a video. They had everything at Buddy Rogers robes, things like that. They had all sorts of good stuff there. But I'm going back almost 10 years when I
mean, how much stuff? I mean, how much memorabilia could you put in a WWE Hall of Fame? It's like mind-boggling.
Oh my God! Didn't the WWE Network have a show on that? Like all the props they've had in storage.
Mr. Fuji's salt packets.
Oh yeah, I love it. It was actually baby powder, I think.
Oh man, you ruined it for me, Phil. I thought it was Phil.
All right, Jimmy, it was Morton salt. Okay, it was Morton salt.
When he threw the salt in Rick Martel's eyes, my eyes were watering. That.
Oh, absolutely. The power of suggestion.
Wait a minute. They were.
Yeah, I didn't like that.
Wow,
Joe, you very upset.
Joe, did you ever become fond of heels? Because that seems like Did you?
Magnificent Morocco was my favorite wrestler.
Oh wow! Does Mike know this? Mike loved Morocco until he acted like a douchebag and wouldn't come on the show.
Oh, I had a chance to interview him a few years ago when he was in Hawaii. But I've told this story a million times. I was such a overzealous fan that 1981 December 5th, 1981 steel cage match. Him and Bob Backlund. Backlund wins it. Backlund wins. He's going back, and all of a sudden Morocco's coming out of the ring, and I run over to the entranceway, and I took my hand and I swiped his forehead and got all his blood on my hands.
Nice.
And I didn't wash my hand for the entire weekend. I went to school with Don Morocco's blood on my hands.
Nice. I gotta get this in too. Morocco was gonna come on the show. Okay.
Yeah.
Like Mike had a nice, conversation with him and everything, and he was gonna come on, and then all of a sudden Mike gets a phone call and he goes, Morocco goes to him. Are you connected to Eric Sims? Do you know Eric Sims? Do you do bookings with Eric Sims? And he was like, yeah. He was like, interview canceled. Click.
Wow.
Not a fan of Eric Sims, I guess.
I guess not.
Wow. Funny shit.
Guilty by association. My God, no.
Yeah,
Morocco was good. He was a tough interview only because, he's up there in age now and, the mind's not working very well. But he had some good memories.
Okay.
But, his wife had a lot to do with me getting in touch with him and talking him and guiding him through his promos and all that stuff. So, that's what happens when these guys get up there in age. It catches up to them. But it was a good interview. A lot of nostalgia, a lot of his training, a lot of the good stuff. Him and Snuka, Tito Santana, all those matches, Pedro. It was a great interview. I loved it. It was.
He got those shoulders from surfing, from swimming out. That's how you built those shoulders.
Yep. He was a great surfer.
And he ate a hero in the middle of a match, which is the greatest thing I've ever seen.
The best thing is he eats him on the surfboard too. He's got a big meatball grinder. We call them grinders up here. The meatball grinder. Oh, he's surfing a wave. It's great.
I could go for a friggin' grinder right now. I missed it.
Yeah. Those were the days when you held an intercontinental title that you were basically world championship material.
Yeah. You were the heel mostly. Yeah. They were the stepping stone to Backlund's belt. That's what the continental title was. Unless Pedro had it, but.
Yep.
But Morocco.
I hated Pedro. Oh my God.
I never understood that.
I hated Pedro.
As in the continental title?
I just hated Pedro. Period. I mean, do I think he was great? He's a Hall of Famer and all that stuff, but I couldn't stand Pedro. Oh my God, he got in Morocco's way, then he got in Valentine's way. I couldn't stand Pedro Morales.
He was up there in age at that time, right? Because God, he was world champion like 10 years before that.
Yeah, but you still believe
you
still believed he could kick the crap out of people. I mean. His arms were huge. He was a big boy. Pedro Morales.
Who was old to me that even when I was younger back then was Chief Jay Strongbow.
Because he was old then.
Right? He was. I'm like, what's he like 50? And they're like, yeah, he is old. I'm like, wow, he's still wrestling and he's a tag team champion.
Let me tell you, Chief Jay Strongbow was built like a baked potato.
Joey Scappa.
A loaded baked potato.
He had the personality of one too.
Oh, geez.
Right. The greatest Indian wrestler that ever lived and ever competed is the guy right behind.
Into that.
It's not even close.
No, what an athlete! What a
But I will tell you this much from what I know, and I've been fortunate enough to know plenty about Wahoo. Wahoo did not play games with nonsense from bookers. Okay, that's why Wahoo was never an intercontinental champion or a world heavyweight champion for Vince and stuff. He didn't take shit from the bookers because the bookers, whether it was Vince or whether it was all the other guys in all the other territories, were all out for themselves. And if Wahoo felt that he was being, worked by the very people he was working for, fuck you. Right. See you later.
I agree. I
tell you what, though, something that I wish would have happened that never happened was bring Wahoo to New York, right? Team him up with Strongbow, and then have Wahoo turn on him.
Oh my God! There you go. But here's something I also know: Wahoo did not enjoy being a heel. He did not want to be a heel.
Oh, really?
Yeah, no, he didn't enjoy that.
Wow.
He loved the fans, and he loved what he did, and he appreciated the fans.
Yeah, and you couldn't have Strongbow turn on Wahoo.
No.
I don't think you could have that happen.
But if they had been a face tag team, you saw what happened with Jay and Jules. And Jules did well. If you put the two most famous Indian wrestlers together, even though one of them was a freaking Italian, you know what I'm saying?
New Jersey.
If you would put those two together, forget about it. The fans would have been a love affair.
I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree.
Yep.
All right, folks, we're going to wrap this thing up. We've been on the air for quite some time. I want to thank everybody for joining me. Phil, the player, and, of course, our special guest, Jimmy the Pharaoh. Thank you so much for tuning in. I want to thank everybody in the chat. They're still yapping away. We had a lot of people chiming back and forth. Great. Oh, awesome. Guess who's in the chat but not on the show tonight?
What's that? Who?
ESO. He's chatting away.
What's with that?
Yeah, what's up with that?
Look, listen, first of all, let's not give our special referee any heat, okay? Bruce is I'm the number one backer of Bruce. Bruce basically was the guy who sent me the link to get on the show tonight.
Oh, you should have asked me. I would have given you.
He's the magic man.
I was scrambling to get this number out, and I'm not going to announce it on the air. I wanted to make sure that this is your number. So you know what? What I'm going to do is when we get
give it away.
The air, would you stop it? He'll get trolled uncontrollably. No, when we get off the air, I'm going to send a text to this number and just put Pharaoh, okay? If it really is you, I'm going to know. You know what I mean? If it's not, somebody's going to write back, and who the fuck is Pharaoh? So I can't lose it.
Unless they're also watching this show.
Yeah,
right.
There you go.
Shit. Betty, wait a minute. What number did you send me?
Wait, I'll show it to you.
It's probably a massage parlor. Knowing you, Betty. Unbelievable.
Phil, you're heading to the big event tomorrow, right? Heading up to the big event in New York?
If I can get my butt up early, yep.
You better get some shut-eye, right? Yeah, you better
Phil, I don't want to put pressure on you, but you got to go, bro.
Yeah, you got to go.
I need you to go, Phil, please. All right?
Yeah, you only have one goal. You got to get Sky Blue or somebody to say, "Hey, Joe, what a day."
I'm gonna Venmo Phil $549 so he can get me a
Stacy Keebler.
$599.99.
Ridiculous.
Unbelievable. Is she really charging that tomorrow? Is it $500 tomorrow?
She's got a lot of audacity, man. A lot of leg, but a lot of audacity.
Rose is there. What is she going to charge? I mean, great. She had some guy pay $55,000 for all her OnlyFans stuff and whatever.
There's some sick people out there. There are people starving to death, and and people are throwing money at these. It boggles the mind.
My mother used to say that. There are people starving
in China.
In China.
You forgot to fill in the rest of it. I mean,
or as Weird Al Yankovic would say, don't you know there are people starving in Japan, so eat it. Just eat it.
Right.
That's reminds me of Sam Kinison. You know why there's people dying in Africa? It's sand. You can't grow nothing on sand. No food there.
So eat your squash or else. Oh, no.
Go. Tell you what, we'll get a big boat. We'll send you to someplace that can grow food. You know? Unbelievable. All right, I want to thank you guys once again for joining us here on Wrestling Remembered. Don't forget Monty and the Pharaoh. I do believe Andre the Giant's daughter is on tomorrow night, correct?
Correct.
And I'm sure we're going to get some good sound bites from the big convention in New York coming up tomorrow. That's a huge one. It's called The Big Event. You know, here I am. I was messaging Mike, and I'm like, what's the name of the big event up there? And he's like, The Big Event. I'm like, oh, it's The Big Event. The Big Event. So there you go. So, all right, folks, guys. That's going to do it for us. Betty, you got True Crime Monday, correct?
Menendez
Sam Shepard,
brothers.
all that stuff?
Yes.
Right? We're going to be – is it Sam Shepard? No, Menendez.
Menendez brothers.
Menendez brothers. I'm all over the place. I'm doing too many shows. My God. All right, guys. Jimmy, have a good one. Be safe. Phil, happy trails to you tomorrow in New York. We'll see you somewhere down the road.
Good luck, Joe. Have a good weekend. Benny.
All right.
Technicolor, baby. Love it.
Yeah. All right. What a day. We're out of here. What a day.
Bye, Jimmy.